We're coming in hot with inspiring guests, witty banter, and colorful commentary for today's veterans and military community. This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Alphas, cue the bugles. Get ready to stand at attention out in public and have people look at you and wondering why you're standing for attention. They will ask you and you will tell them that this is one of the most important weeks in the veteran community. We have Memorial Day coming up, and before that we have Poppy Day coming up. If you don't know what that is, shame on you, but you will not have to worry about that after today, because that's going to be one of our stories. Ashley, do you have big plans for Memorial Day?
Oh, I can't think about what my plans are within the next.
You forgot
3
about
minutes.
Memorial Day? See what I did there?
Very nice. No plans as of yet.
Okay, I will. If you want to fly to LA, I will be busy. I'm speaking at one event. My post is hosting an event. There's Battleship Iowa. Fleet Week will be happening here in Los Angeles.
Whoop, whoop.
I don't have enough time to do everything, so maybe I'll do nothing.
There you go.
Because I don't want to feel like I left anybody out.
That's fair.
Specifically. All right. Oh, this first story a little backstory. This is a sad moment, and I wish OG Ashley was here, and I wish Mark Seavey was here, because this is the end of an era for us. This story.
I wasn't a part of all of your talks about this place beforehand, and I appreciate that introduction before the sentences that I'm about to read, which are. Let's get into this. All right. Texas's long troubled Fort Hood is renamed after first Hispanic 4-star general. Fort Hood in Killeen, Texas, named after a Confederate general and long plagued by a series of suicides, homicides, and fatal accidents, was renamed on Tuesday after the Army's first Hispanic 4-star general. The base was redesignated Fort Cavazos in honor of General Richard Edward Cavazos, a veteran of the Korean and Vietnam Wars who was born in Texas to Mexican-American parents. In 1982, he became the first Hispanic to wear 4 stars on his uniform. The Central Texas Post is one of 9 U.S. Army installations being renamed after the recommendations of a congressional commission set up to remove Confederate names from military bases. Fort Hood is named after John Bell Hood, a Confederate general. The change at one of the country's largest military installations follows efforts by the military to confront racial injustice and inequality in its ranks, particularly in the aftermath of the 2020 killing of George Floyd at the hands of police in Minneapolis. General Cavazos' combat-proven leadership, his moral character, and his loyalty to his soldiers and their families make him the fearless yet respected and influential leader that he was during the time he served and beyond, said Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, commanding general of the 3rd Armored Corps, headquartered at the Texas Post. Cavazos, who retired from the Army in 1984 after 33 years of service, died in 2017.
So,
Jeff, thoughts?
Goodbye, Fort Hood. You were the well that never failed us to provide a story that we could have here on Tango Alpha Lima. We've had married couples both lose their jobs there. We've had murders, and we've had suicides, and we've had really catastrophic accidents that happen there. And while we will miss you, we kind of won't miss you. That place, I don't know. I have so many things I could say about that. But also, I want to recognize, so since a lot of this was triggered after the George Floyd incident, this podcast had a 2 episodes on that was also triggered by that, and had guests from California all the way to New York, and worked in law enforcement and spoke to this. And it looks like super producer Holly is going to find that link for us. And it was a really important show. I think it established us as a voice for the American Legion, where we could talk about some things that before, because the Legion doesn't take a stand on anything until it goes from resolution and works all the way up, and we can kind of react a little bit quicker and kind of address some things, but stay within the mission of the Legion. So hopefully we've been doing that for these past years, and hopefully we will continue to do it into the future.
The future.
The future. I wonder if we can get an echo on that, because that's amazing. All right. Today we'll be joined by Terri Tanielian,
There you go.
Yep, Special Assistant to the President for Veterans Affairs. Terri is a nationally recognized expert in veteran and mental health policy. Prior to joining the team at the White House, she served as Senior Behavioral Specialist at the RAND Corporation, where she led several landmark studies examining the needs of military service members, veterans, their families, and their caregivers. We'll be back with Terri right after the break.
The American Legion is raising awareness about PTSD and veteran suicide by offering hope, camaraderie, and support.
Be the one to help end veteran suicide.
The goal of the American Legion's Be the One campaign is to destigmatize asking for mental health support.
Be the one to ask a veteran in your life how they're doing.
Be the one who saves one veteran.
Go to betheone.org and help the American Legion end veteran suicide.
Will you be the one?
All right, Alphas, we are back. We have a very special guest. We had to get background checks to even talk to Terri Tanielian on the internet here, because she's very protected. Hello, Terri. How are you? Do you feel safe?
I'm happy to be here, Jeff. Thanks so much.
All right. You were telling me before the show that this job that you have is it's an established position. It sounds very cool. Special Assistant to the President for Veterans Affairs. Congratulations on that. And we're going to jump in with Ashley for the first question. Ashley, good morning.
Good morning, Jeff. Welcome. Terri, thank you so much for coming in and chatting with us. Okay, so I'm super interested. Can you just let me know, what's your background? How did you end up working directly for the president?
Sure. So thanks so much for that question, Ashley. It's an interesting route that I took to get to this position and this opportunity. So I grew up in a really small town and decided that I wanted to pursue a career to try to help individuals who were experiencing mental health problems. And so I went to graduate school, was trained in psychology, began doing a lot of research and policy analyses on trying to kind of help improve how we can provide access to mental health and substance use services for individuals that are experiencing challenges. I joined a think tank where I was asked to help take on some studies that were specifically focused on military service members and their families, particularly as we were trying to understand the impacts of deployment and look at the potential causes of Gulf War illness. I became fascinated and I really dove into the work to try to understand the challenges, the traumas, the deployment related stressors and opportunities that were facing our military service members and their families, and started doing a lot of work on the psychological impacts of deployment, of war, combat exposures, et cetera. And began, really investing a lot of time in trying to break down some of the barriers and improve policies for service members and veterans, as well as their families and other loved ones. And so as that work continued and as the president announced his campaign, began getting engaged in thinking through what future opportunities could look like to really change how we delivered services for the population. And had a role on the transition team and supporting the president during that time period, and then was asked to come on and work in the Domestic Policy Council, where I sit and report to Ambassador Susan Rice and help drive the president's priorities to address the needs of veterans.
Well, that sounds great. It sounds like you're really passionate about it and knowledgeable on all those topics. And it's awesome to be able to take something that you have like an internal drive for and use it to help others. I love that. And I love connecting with people that have that ability. It's just not everybody has that.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Jeff's selfish. He's kicking puppies over there.
I could be the special assistant for this veteran.
There you go.
And Terry, you're doing the good work over there. Speaking of your good work, so you've talked to us about how you got there. Now that you are there, what is it? What are some examples of the things of your own work that you're doing with, people still serving and veterans, caregivers, and families, and anybody else that I forgot that you might cover?
Sure. Well, I think you all recognize that President Biden has been very vocal about his belief that we have a sacred obligation as a nation to care, to really equip and train those we send into harm's way, and then care for them and their families when they return home. And so his interest in ensuring that we are doing all we can at a whole of government level, that means not just the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is clearly central to this mission, but also bringing in other federal partners to try to address ways we can improve the delivery of services and programs to support veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors is really at the heart of what we're trying to drive at the Domestic Policy Council. So some of the issues that we are tackling and really working to address at the top of the list is veteran suicide. And this has been very important. It was actually mentioned in the State of the Union address this year that we need to do more to reduce the number of veterans who are dying by suicide each year. And so we released a strategy in 2021 that was specifically focused on reducing military and veteran suicide and trying to kind of stand on the shoulders of prior work, but to focus how we were aiming some of our federal resources to back some evidence-based approaches to really help drive down what we're seeing in terms of the risk for suicide in this population. We're also tackling veteran homelessness. And so we've been really making that a priority, not just for VA, but for HUD, as well as the U.S. Interagency and the Council on Homelessness, and driving some actions there. And so those are really two critical priorities where we're bringing the whole of government together. But we're also focused on with the challenges that we know many service members and veterans face from toxic exposures, doing more to ensure that we can deliver benefits and services to address the adverse health consequences of those toxic exposures. So the PACT Act obviously is a signature piece of legislation that the president's been able to enact, and we're working to ensure that it's swiftly and effectively implemented. While we're also really working in partnership with the Department of Labor, the Department of Defense, as well as the Department of Veterans Affairs to ensure smooth transition for service members to civilian status, address health equity, modernize the VA. It's a long list because we care so deeply about making sure that we get this right and use the opportunity we have to drive some of these priorities forward.
And I think that the list does have to be long, and because it's really something that's difficult to put a finger on what the actual solution is. I've heard recently that since our spring meetings that the VA and the American Legion are going to pair up to promote buddy checks, but especially during buddy check week. I don't know if you had any hand in that, but I do like that. We don't say partnership. What can I call it? I do like that collaborative effort.
There you go, collaboration.
I could be a politician. Yeah,
Look at you.
The collaborative effort for a desired outcome. So that's amazing, and thank you for doing all of that. I got to pitch a Legion a little bit in the middle of this. We also do the Be the One program. You're probably familiar with that, and I'm just glad to see that even though we have a history of disputing the numbers at 22, is it 23, is it 17? Like, it doesn't matter, it's greater than 0, right? So a number greater than 0 veterans we're losing every day to suicide. So to me, that makes your work even more important, and it makes you kind of a superhero with this security clearance. So there you go.
I'll have to keep that one in mind as a descriptor. I've never heard that one before, but thank you.
Yeah.
It's an honor and a privilege to do this work. It's just so important. And, having the opportunity to work with my partners at the Department of Veterans Affairs, DOD, across the agencies, really the Department of Health and Human Services. I think everyone recognizes that this is a huge priority. It's a public health challenge, but we have to get after it aggressively.
Awesome. Ashley, I didn't read ahead. You were supposed to kind of weave in to be the one. Sorry.
I'm so Jeff, you and I are always one step in sync with one another. You're basically my right and left arm. And I will have it no other way. I think that all these initiatives are wonderful, and definitely, the Be the One program focusing on eliminating veteran suicide in general. I have a lot of suicide in my family. I even have military members in my family that have committed suicide. But there's so much to it, and there's so many. Like, I really love all the initiatives that you're pulling out, and you mentioned coming back from a deployment and how you try to support the families then. As I'm sure a lot of our listeners know, but if you don't, reintegration is one of the most difficult times. It can be harder, and it often is harder than when the military member is gone. So when they come back, you have spent 6 months to 18 months alone taking care of everything, and then they come in and you're trying to readjust to what that is, and they think nothing has changed, and the fork is in a different drawer, and oh my goodness. So I love that you're supporting that, but also you are making a note and a priority of something that I haven't seen. Maybe it's just not something that I've been aware of, but I'm seeing it more and more lately, which is prioritizing caregivers. So the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, for example, what a wonderful foundation. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard anybody from that organization speak, but it is amazing. The things that the caregivers are doing and the ways that they are supporting their families. So I really appreciate that they are included in all of that. Do you have anything specific that in that genre of caregiving that has touched you or that you want to work on or focus?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we understand, and this is a little bit of a wonky phrase, but, as an individual experiences a challenge, like there's this, it's like a pebble in a pond, it has ripples, right? And those ripples can go both ways. And so a person is, an individual within a unit, that could be a family, it's a community, within society. And so we kind of need to recognize and reinforce each of those various different circles and outer circles, if you will. And so for me, having grown up in a household where caregiving was really actually very important to how we cared for our family members, particularly at the end of their life, and how we supported them, recognizing that we needed to do the same for service members and veterans, particularly of our wounded, ill, and injured populations. I had an opportunity earlier in my career to do some of the studies that began to understand the impact that caregiving can have on veteran and military caregivers. And so knowing that they're an important group has been obviously at the center of what Dr. Biden has done with the Joining Forces Initiative and some of our policymaking. Just recently, the president signed an executive order on our care economy and took specific actions and directed specific actions on how we could better support family caregivers, including caregivers for our veterans. And so we'll be seeing over the course of the next year, the Department of Veterans Affairs take very specific steps that will help veterans be supported in their homes, but also explicitly support the caregivers who are participating in that family caregiver program. And one of those is to ensure that they have access to mental health services, because we know that caregiving can be stressful, and we want caregivers to take care of themselves and ensure that they can live full and healthy lives that are supported, so that they can also support their loved ones.
Yeah, totally. It's so important. And the people that I've met And you just go, oh my goodness, their stories are really touching. So I think it's wonderful that we are recognizing and taking care of the caregivers who are doing so much.
Right, it's the same thing, the airplane thing. You got to put the mask on yourself and then do the other thing. So thank you for helping them put the mask on themselves. Yes, there you go. I'm figuring this out. It's early morning. I'm a Marine. It's a lot of things working against me right now. So it's hard to ask these questions because I don't know what you can and can't say, but is there anything that's been declassified that's coming up that we should know about? Or anything that you're working on that you anticipate will get through legislation?
So, to the extent that we have administrative capabilities and authorities, our focus has also been to make sure that we leverage those to do as much as we can with the existing resources that we have. And so the president's budget outlined, again, bold investments in how we can address the needs of veterans through robust VA, both in healthcare as well as benefits delivery. But one of the other priorities that the president has, where there's a great deal of intersection here, particularly around our interest in reducing suicide, is around mental health. So in addition to supporting veterans as part of his unity agenda, tackling the nation's mental health crisis is also a key part of the unity agenda. And so we've launched a comprehensive strategy to address and transform how we integrate and think about mental health in the United States. Mental health is health, period. And we're working to ensure that anyone with a mental health challenge can get the support they need. We've got a few announcements that will be coming out this week that are really serving to bolster how we can increase the number of professionals who are trained to recognize the risks of mental health problems and get the support to individuals where and when they need it. We're doing a lot to focus around youth mental health in particular and provide more resources in schools. But we know we're also continuing to work with DoD and VA to break down some of the barriers that exist to help seeking for service members and veterans, and to help them hire more professionals that can be part of the solution. And so you'll continue to see efforts in those areas. And then we're also working towards a new national strategy for suicide prevention. The VA and the Department of Defense both have their own strategies, which are based upon the national strategy that was released in 2012. We've committed to creating an updated and new national strategy for suicide prevention that incorporates everything we've learned over the past decade plus and kind of helps ensure that we're delivering equitable services and focuses on the risk factors that we know can lead to someone being at risk, which aren't just necessarily through the pathway of mental illness. And so how are we addressing economic risk factors? What are we doing to provide more legal support services? What are we doing to support people during vulnerable transitions? And so Ashley, you mentioned clearly that transition from military to civilian life and reintegration from deployment are times where vulnerability is introduced. But many people face other transitions in their life too. We want them to be supported through those so that we can address any challenges and get folks help. So suicide, as we get closer to September and National Suicide Prevention Month, will continue to be a priority. And we'll see more announcements. We've got more funding going into the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. We're trying to build more mobile crisis response teams that have competence to be able to respond to individuals who may be in mental health or substance use crisis and get them into care. We're doing more to support drug and treatment court programs for veterans, but also for non-veterans so that we can keep people in the community rather than seeing our jails and prison become the #1 provider for individuals with behavioral health problems, for example. And so we're continuing to kind of drive transformation in how we address mental health, and not just for veterans and service members. So though clearly both DoD and VA have made this a top priority within their ranks as well.
Well, I a little bit back in that you kind of sparked something, because the different things that can trigger someone to get into a desperate situation, and I call that whole section of yours the scenarios of overwhelm, because scenarios that overwhelm people make things seem hopeless, right? So it's the economic factors that we don't talk about. Can they get a decent job? Are the costs of living where they are? Because Los Angeles, where I'm at, is the largest population of veterans. It's absolutely unlivable for so many of them that living on the street is normal. I'm not going to say it's normal, but it's definitely trending towards normal. People living on the street in RVs in the back of their cars, whatever. And taking care of all of these scenarios of overwhelm is one of the many, 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 many things that deserve attention in this fight to eliminate suicide. And it's true. Also, it's not just veteran suicide. It's suicide in general, because a fit community, benefits everyone. If you see and experience fitness, like physical fitness, if you live in an area it's like that, you tend to be more fit. If your mental fitness is there, which leads me, is there a mental fitness workout that I can do? Like, you got to do
there used to be brain training. Remember when that was a big thing?
Yeah. You got to do 5 crossword puzzles before breakfast. I don't know, but I'm gonna sell an infomercial on this. Patent pending. Let's edit this out. So thank you for addressing something that I haven't even thought through, but I've already given it a title: scenarios of overwhelm. So thank you for that, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to look like something's happening up here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Jeff. It's interesting because there are actually studies that show that raising the minimum wage can be associated with reductions in suicide deaths. And so we need to think about our economic policies and how we're supporting people to be able to thrive in their communities, to ensure that they have stable housing and that they can afford rent. And so it's just as much about prevention of homelessness as it is about addressing the needs of the unsheltered. And so, as we think about all of our policies, we think about them through the lens of how is this going to improve the lives? And I see that as prevention, right? Because it's all really critical. And while we're making those investments, we're also, mindful. The Surgeon General of the United States just released a new advisory on the epidemic of isolation and loneliness. And so what are we doing to build social connections? And so really, I think with your campaign, and this is about how do we connect with people? How do we ensure that we're reaching out, building those connections, supporting one another, helping those when they have challenges, getting them connected to services where it can help alleviate some of that overwhelm, and ensure that they get the care that they need to support themselves, but to support and help the ones around them that they love. And so, I look at it as like a puzzle of all these pieces that need to come together to kind of reinforce how we're addressing this challenge, because it's not one Band-Aid. It is really many, many things that are about empowering and creating lives of opportunity for individuals.
Right? Because if it's too expensive to live, you don't want people to think that on one side it's too expensive to live. So what's the solution to that? We need alternate solutions other than suicide. Yep. That's my thought.
You're sticking to it.
Yep.
I think it's wonderful. I think all of these initiatives are, and I'm really hopeful for all of them. And I feel like a lot of people are talking about it now, and the more people that talk about it, that hopefully the more ideas will come up, and we'll find a solution, and then we can fix it. That would be great. I know we're trying with the Be the One program, and there's a lot of initiatives within the military itself. One of the things that comes up in some of the studies I read is that if you have one suicide, that it can be contagious. And so it can happen again. So those down days are huge, where you just go, all right, let's put a little break in there and let's talk about it and see what's happening. So I believe you have a connection with the American Legion. Is that accurate?
So my dad served in the U.S. Navy, and while his military service was before I was born, he actually didn't talk about it that much. He was pretty quiet about his military service. But I grew up kind of going to the local American Legion Hall for many, many family events, like weddings, baby showers, bridal showers. It was just kind of part of, what we did and where we hosted family events. So in upstate New York, the Hudson Falls Post was definitely well trafficked by my family growing up. Even though my dad didn't necessarily wear his veteran status on his sleeve, he also, after his military service, went on to be a police officer. And so, his was a career in multiple uniforms, if you will, in public service. But yes, I do remember many times running around as a young child in the American Legion Hall.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you followed in his footsteps, right? Of a lifetime of public service. So that's wonderful how families can teach that to one another. What do you think, Jeff?
Is Hudson Falls near the birthplace of Jeff Daly, which is Rochester?
It's not too far. It's east. Yeah. East of Albany or northeast.
There's a plaque.
I'm just, yes, home of Jeff Daly, or birthplace. I don't think it was ever really my home, but thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I think that we've distracted you from that work long enough, so I'm going to need you to get back to it and do some more signing and classifying and whatever the government needs to solve these problems. I trust that you're on it.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. It is a long list. We are really dedicated to trying to do more. Thank you, both of you, for this conversation, this opportunity. Really grateful for the work the American Legion is doing to bring attention and through this program, and to help others and get more folks to reach out and get connected to services. I think is just going to be the game changer we need. So thank you so much for the opportunity to join you today.
All right, there you go. You got. We want to thank Terri for being here with us today. We're gonna chit chat about her a little bit. She won't be here to hear it. She's gonna have to tune in. So we're gonna have one additional listener for that part. But for the rest of you, please take a little break. As she said, take care of yourself in this brief break, and come back for the rest of the show after the aforementioned break.
A veteran is a veteran.
A veteran is a veteran.
A veteran is a veteran.
The American Legion embraces all current and former members of the military and endeavors to help them transition into their communities.
We are Veterans Strengthening America.
We are the American Legion.
All right, Alphas, we hope you had refreshments and are in a more pleasant place than you were before you had that refreshment. I hope you had a great break. We are back. Ashley, Terri was here. Terri was awesome.
Yep.
What do you think?
She's great. We talked about how she got into service. Her dad had a lifetime of service. She's continuing on with that. And she just really seems to care about people and getting these policies in place to try to help get rid of suicide. We're hopeful. We're trying.
I mean, I can't think of a more noble pursuit at this point. And the fact that she's looking deep and wide and trying to cover everything that may cause this these unfortunate events to occur. So thank you, Terri, and for all the work that you're doing. All right, here we go for our favorite part of this part of the show. Wait a minute. We are going into pew, 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 pew. Rapid fire. All right, rapid fire number 1. You ready?
Ready.
You're going to cry?
Yeah.
Okay. A very good girl deploys on Courier Forward. Sage, the service dog. This is from Navy Times. The first in class carrier, Gerald R. Ford from Michigan, went to Michigan, played football at Michigan, deployed this week with a first of kind asset for its sailors, a service dog. Sage is a 3-year-old female yellow Labrador retriever, and she's the first dog to deploy with a ship's crew through a pilot program meant to address mental health and resiliency. The Virginia-based nonprofit Mutts with a Mission trained Sage and loaned her to the crew for the deployment. The dog will comfort sailors and is trained to help them cope with operational stress. It's part of what is dubbed, in typical military speak, the Expanded Operational Stress Control Canine Program. That sounds more military than anything I've ever read in my entire life.
Make her bark. Could you speak whenever I say EOSCCP? My goodness. What a good girl. I'm so happy to hear that this is happening. I've seen the videos, I've seen the pictures. I think she's going to have a great time. Here, she's a lab though. She's going to want to swim. So let's keep her on the boat. She doesn't need to swim in the ocean.
No, and not as far out as they're going to be. Like, be a good girl there, Sage.
Be a good girl.
All right, we're going to move on now to rapid fire number pew pew 2. Marines to deactivate historically female recruit training battalion. It's from MarineCorpsTimes.com. As the Marine Corps continues to gender integrate its boot camps on both coasts, it is shutting down the recruit training battalion that for decades was the only unit that turned female recruits into Marines. The closing of the now co-ed 4th Recruit Training Battalion was characterized by the Corps as an administrative decision that will help standardize training across its recruit depots of San Diego and Parris Island, South Carolina. All right, I was just going to say Congress, they directed the Corps to integrate women into recruit training at San Diego, which was open only to men until 2021. So progress.
2021. That seems too recent.
Right.
Alas.
There's 2 boot camps for the Marine Corps, and the Marines have a lot more men than women, so they concentrated.
Here's an interesting piece. Do you know that when they look at how they can recruit, what they do is they look at high schools and then they look at eligible males. That's it. They don't look at females at all.
I hadn't heard that. Didn't know anything about that.
I spent time with a recruiting station, and I was like, you only look, and they're like, yep, that's how we look at it. And I was like, oh man, well, I feel like you're missing out on a lot of people that might want to join then.
Well, they're looking at is where they target their energy and their focus, right?
Right. Yeah. But it's just one of those things. Like if I know plenty of women that have been in the Marines, so maybe let's add them in.
Oh yeah. All right. It's a puppy story. All right. As I told you before, May 26th is coming up after this show. May 26th is Puppy Day, and if you do that, you should wear it all weekend, all the way through Memorial Day. I mean, you should change clothes, but put the puppy back on your new clean clothes up your freshly showered body. All right, yes. Here we go. The puppy story. This is from our favorite website, legion.org. After World War I, the poppy flourished in Europe. Scientists attributed the growth to soils in France and Belgium becoming enriched with the lime from the rubble left by the war. From the dirt and mud grew a beautiful red poppy. The red poppy came to symbolize the bloodshed during battle following the publication of the wartime poem In Flanders Fields. The poem was written by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, MD, while serving on the front lines. On September 27th, 1920, the poppy became the official flower of the American Legion family to memorialize the soldiers who fought and died during the war. In 1924, the distribution of poppies became a national program of the American Legion. Led by the American Legion Auxiliary, each year members of the American Legion family distribute poppies with a request that the person receiving the flower make a donation to support the future of veterans, active duty military personnel, and their families with medical and financial needs. Poppy Day is celebrated in countries around the world. The American Legion brought National Poppy Day to the United States by asking Congress to designate the Friday before Memorial as National Poppy Day. On May 26th, wear a red poppy to honor the fallen and support the living who have worn our nation's uniform. Poppy!
Wonderful. Poppy Day.
Is fun fact, I looked into, like, we have some planters in the front of our building. I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we like grew red poppies? No. Those are
that's fun fact. That's something you were like, let me grow some opium.
Well, that's because that's the genus or the whatever. That's the type of poppy that they use. The seeds are used for.
They go all
the
out.
ones that grow here don't do that. The orange and the whatever.
Oh.
It's just the red ones from over there. So you have to go through a whole thing. You have to grow them from seed. It's very hard to get, and they can't be in the ground because they'll spread too quickly. They have to be in a container. There's a whole lot of stuff you got to do.
You know, let's just not do it.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a type of poppy called
the American Legion.
Oh, we should get those.
That was seamless. Let's do this.
They sell them at the emblem stores?
Jeff, did you know that there's a type of poppy called the American Legion?
No.
Oh, now you do.
Do they sell that at Emblem Sales? Can I buy that at convention?
Next year.
No, we haven't had. I want to get this year. I want to buy it this year. I'm gonna send them an email now. Okay, burpee. Oh, that triggered me. I don't want to do exercise. All right. Any final shout outs or thoughts?
Just a shout out to your parents for making such a handsome man.
All right. Hi, Mom. Okay. And shout out to your barber, which I know is you, for always keeping all your hairs on point, especially ones in front. They're on point. All right. Let's go home. I have to prepare for Poppy Day. So we got to go.
Go do it. Go grow your poppies. Hey, everybody out there, just don't forget to subscribe to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you consume, eat, listen to, take in podcasts. If you could leave us a review and make sure that it's 5 stars, I would really appreciate it. The thing is, if you don't, I legally have to come up to you in a restaurant when you're sitting with your family at maybe some sort of important event, like maybe a birthday party, like a 50th birthday party or something like that. I will lock eyes with you and I will say loud enough so that all of your extended family can hear, I know what you did. I don't appreciate it. And I'm going to the authorities. So unless you want that, leave us 5 stars. Okay. And if you want to like suggest any guests or anything, go to legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima, click on suggest a guest link. It's super easy. We want to talk to those people. So Jeff,
you can suggest a guest or rat out somebody that didn't give us 5 stars, and Ashley will
that'd be great too.
Yep.
Then I have to haunt them.
She will do your bidding. You're so sinister.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I don't want to get on the wrong side of you. All right. This is a grand week for you veterans out there. Please go enjoy Poppy Day and have a meaningful, I don't like to say happy, but have a meaningful Memorial Day. Honor those who have fallen before us in this time so that they may live forever. Find some names. If you go to the cemetery, find some names and say them, because you know that old saying, you die twice, once physically and once the last time your name is ever spoken. Make sure that more people live on in that realm this coming weekend. All right, with that, I'm going to declare season 4, episode 160, mission complete.